Welcome to the Coffee and Questions podcast. I am your host, Michelle Berman-Michael, and my mission with this podcast is simple: to help realtors and loan officers across the world tap into the value Instagram can have for them and their business. To me, organic business that comes to us is the name of the game. On this show, you're going to hear from myself, other experts across social media, and also others that are just like you, selling real estate and doing loans and doing it at a high level on social media. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Coffee and Questions podcast. I am joined by one of my favorite humans in our industry, without a doubt, none other than Stacey Soleil. She is the head of community and industry relations at Follow Up Boss.
Thanks, Michelle. It's always hard to live up to an introduction that's just so wonderful. So thank you for being so kind.
The thing that you do so incredibly well, which is why, again, people need to listen to you, is you have done an incredible job at building a personal brand inside the Follow Up Boss brand. And for those of you guys who are like, well, I have a brand too. What I mean by personal brand is if you consume Stacey on Instagram, which she will let you know how to do so, her coloring and the things that she puts out there are Stacey. If you don't know Stacey after this, hopefully you will, but her personality shines through so much in her content. And the thing that is so cool that I'm about to say is her colors are not Follow Up Boss's colors. And what she is going to hopefully help you feel more confident in is that it does not need to be.
It's interesting because depending on where you work, there's different rules that you have to abide by. And so for some people, they would be listening to you right now saying, sure, that sounds fantastic, but I contractually cannot deviate from a certain color palette or a certain font. And if that's the case, there are different ways to still curate and allow your personality and your you-ness to shine. But for those of you that have a little bit more of that flexibility in your brand, as far as being able to say, this is my personal brand. However, I'm still representing a brand. So how can I parlay, this is me, with still identifying this is you and creating that bridge there. There was a time when I absolutely thought, in order to be taken seriously, in order to make an impact, I have to mirror exactly the same colors, exactly the same fonts as the company I'm at, or else it won't make sense. And so I did that. And at the time, the company I was working with had they had very interesting colors, and they were perfect for their brand. They weren't really mine. I felt more like a representative of a sports team because the colors that they had chosen were actually two very specific colors that you would see on a sports team. So every time I would post, I always felt like I felt like it wasn't me. If we're talking about building relationships, if we're talking about how you fill your pipeline and nurture that pipeline and convert that pipeline and continue to build, if you feel disconnected in any way, shape, or form, whether that's like something doesn't feel like it's me or something feels just a little off, if you feel that, I can guarantee you the community that you connect with is going to feel it as well. Right. And it took me a little bit of time to really figure that out. As it would happen, I had a little bit of a pivot in my career. I had an opportunity present itself, and I decided to take that leap. And when I made that leap, I'll admit, the first couple of weeks, I automatically just pivoted, went into what's your color palette? And I started to do that. And then I quickly realized, well, wait a minute, I'm doing exactly what I did before, which is being not me for somebody else.
If you're not posting content that you feel connected to, the ability to continue to do so goes away, right? Or the desire to continue to do so goes away. And this is something that I feel very connected to, because for me, when I create content, I love the way it looks. I put it out there and I'm like, oh my gosh, I love the style of this. And I love the freedom to be able to change the background. And I don't know what's going on with me right now, but I love black brick with my color palette. And so all of a sudden that's been coming out, and it's the freedom and the flexibility to be able to do those things keeps me super engaged in what I'm doing, right? I want to show up on Instagram for my people. I want to show up on Facebook for my people because I know that they're expecting it, right? And I know that when I put it out there, not only am I passionate about it, but it represents me well. I'm grateful for the timing of this conversation because I think a lot of people right now feel like they have to be doing all of the things and focused on everyone but themselves to make sure that their business continues the way that they're used to it continuing. But what you just said ties so perfectly into that. So I want to go on this tangent of, if you are creating content for everyone else, right? If you're more focused on creating and building content to serve your brokerage or to serve the organization or the company that you work for, you eventually will not want to do that anymore, right? Unless that content, to your point, Stacey, is aligned with where your heart's at. So like if you, let's use Keller Williams or EXP or Century 21 or Berkshire Hathaway, any of the brokerages that are out there, right? The list goes on and on and on. If you don't like the colors, but you're making the content anyway in that color palette, you're not making content for you. You're making content for them to serve their brand and to serve them. And what's going to happen, in my opinion, is that the content that does go out is going to miss the mark on how you serve your person, right? The person you are trying to attract for your business.
You know, and as I listen to you, I'm thinking about a specific agent, and maybe some of those agents are listening to your podcast today. There are some folks that, you know, there are rules within their brokerages where their signage, when they put that for sale sign out in front of that house, it absolutely has to be those brokerage colors. So it can create this momentary disconnect of like, okay, let's say that I love beiges and, you know, soft caramel and cream color tones. And I've created this whole social media environment that's, aligns with these colors that I love. But then when I go and put my for sale sign out in front of the houses, it's red, white, and blue, or whatever the colors are of that brand. There are agents that say, well, wait a minute, but if I do that, it's going to disconnect and then they're not going to remember me. And so let's just touch on that really, really quick. Let's just get that part out of the way. Understandably, you have guidelines and rules that you will have to go by based on where you hang your hat for a brokerage standpoint. Fine, totally fine. At the end of the day, everything comes down to what? Relationships. And when you're building relationships, people are remembering the person, not the sign. What I'm thinking is, for me anyway, colors, fonts, or whatever it is that you're trying to use are a way to kind of fuel my tank, right? For me to feel creatively, giving myself permission to be a little bit more creative and allow my personality to shine through, right? However, that's me doing what? Getting to know people to build relationships. And as I build relationships, they're going to learn more about what I'm good at. If that is real estate, if that is technology, if that is coaching, whatever it is that you are really good at, whatever it is, if you're a real estate agent, building those relationships and showing them that, hey, I am the person to go to buy, sell, invest, whatever it is that you're doing. By the time they get to that sign, it's like, whatever, that's the sign, right? It just is what it is. Nothing disconnects. I would say that you run a bigger risk if you lean only on a sign alone and then just move through the motions, not building the relationships, not allowing yourself to have permission to shine as to who you are. How do you continually fill your pipeline and build new relationships if you feel like a robot?
You don't.
You don't. You really don't. And listen, I think you and I talked about this before. That doesn't mean you have to be extra. You don't have to use bold colors or use words like extra to stand out, right? You can be super serious, super analytical, super fact-driven, or whatever it is that makes you, you. Please give yourself permission to allow that to shine. Because if you're super analytical and you're maybe a little bit more monotone versus expressive. Now, is somebody who's a little bit more, vibrant and expressive going to be drawn to you? No, but guess what? All of those other serious, more analytical types are going to be like, I resonate with that one right there, right? That one right there is a little too extra for me. It might be great, but that one right there, they speak my language. And so I always tell people, listen, whoever it is you are, that's your magnet, right? It's a magnet to other people who relate to you. So if you lean on that from a color perspective, from how you post, how you leverage your grid, how you leverage your stories, what you say in your videos, you're going to have that attraction model in place that will be super authentic. People will want to work with you based on who you are.
We're not all for everybody, and that's totally okay. And I think the sooner that we all accept that, and we understand that I don't need every client in the sea to have a successful organization, right? Or for the agents listening, right? You guys don't need to have every single homeowner in your area use you in order to have a successful or a record-breaking year in 2023 as we get closer to starting that. You just don't. You need your people, because if you attract your people and the people that are really, as you said, magnetized to you, right? I love that phrase or that terminology. But if you find the other half of your magnet to attach to, right, you're going to be able to really create a beautiful business. If you enjoyed this episode, please go follow my guests on social media. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please consider leaving us a review wherever you consume this content.